don't know me, I had the pleasure of being married to Lorraine for 22 years. And sister, I promised you we'd be done in an hour and 20. We're going to go about 7 minutes over. I apologize. First, I don't have words. They are inadequate to express the incredible gratitude I have for all the people who have come here today, the effort everybody's made, not just flying in from this continent, but other continents. And that is a testimonial to the love you have for my wife, Lorraine. Now, last night we had a wake here with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. I never thought I would have a sore hand and a swollen knee from greeting people, but that's how pathetic I am physically. And I heard a lot of things in that testimonial last night, like, I never heard your wife say an unkind word about anybody. Well, I lived with her. She did. I never heard your wife yell or scream. I lived with her. She did. I never heard her curse. Now, granted, she had less curses in her lifetime than I had watching one of my kids' ball games. But she did, but very little. And as any speaker today in any audience, even the husband delivering a eulogy who's lost his life and his purpose for his life, I have to be respectful to your time, and I will be. So I want to impart 3 lessons that my wife somehow is still giving to me today, even though she's not physically here. The first is faithfulness. It was a Wednesday. I was an intern at St. Francis Hospital in Hartford, Connecticut in November 1988, and I just saw her walk in the cafeteria. I was seated with 4 or 5 other doctors at the table, and I said, "Who is that blonde that just went by?" And they said, "Don't worry, she will not go out with any doctors." So the challenge was made. Where else would my wife work than in a Catholic hospital? Her faith was unrelenting. She prayed so hard in a rosary, she broke 2 of them. In the last 3 months of her life, she was in the hospital 73 of those 90 days. And she never lost her faith. Never. I have wasted my time inculcating what into my children? A work ethic. My wife, of course, inculcated faithfulness. Our second lesson is humility. Humility. I met her on a Wednesday, and we married on a Saturday, November the 10th, 1990. And we started an incredible journey. A journey, to be honest, that's centered on our children. And I'm here to tell you, we didn't have the world's greatest marriage. We fought over trivia. And for those of you going home on the car ride tonight, think about that. Think about the stuff you argue about and ask, does it really make sense? And think about the fact that I met and talked to so many people today from different worlds in my life, and it took a funeral for us to get together. Ask yourself if that makes sense. Can you carve out a weekend in the next year to maybe connect with someone that you were great friends with 10 years ago? And so our lives centered on our children. And what am I going to do? As a 3-athlete high school player and a guy who played baseball in college, and my children kept telling me it was Division III, I played anyhow. I have an academic All-American plaque in my office, and my sons keep telling me I should hide it because it was a D3 plaque, Dad, D3. Shake that. So what did I value? Work ethic, performance, performance in the classroom, performance on the athletic field, character. Those are the things that I valued as a thoracic surgeon and as an athlete. And what do they breed? 3 things that are said about me all over the world, but none of them said about my wife. Ego, pomposity, and arrogance. Humility, something my wife has taught us all. The word humility is defined as a quality of being modest and respectful. It's the second part of that definition that is surprising. And to my children, remember your mother and be respectful. People may look different, may sound different, may have different values than you. If you respect them and get to know them, they may end up helping you more in life than you can imagine. These are not some empty words from a podium at your mother's funeral. This is the reality of what it took me 22 years with her to learn. And she's right. Many people today are incredibly successful in this church. I'm not sure how we define success. We had a long talk about it last night. But I ask you, why? Why are you successful? Is it your ego, or is it your humility that in the end is going to make you truly successful? It was a Monday. She had just received her 24th dose of doublet toxic chemotherapy. She was tired. She was exhausted. I had a 10 operation day. I usually do 8. I had 10 that day. I got to her room. It was a little late, 7 o'clock, and of course Lorraine saved some of her dinner for me. And Jeopardy was coming on. Now everybody knows here that I'm a competitor. And I looked over at her on her DeLorme drip. She was wiped out, and I said, "You are going down today, girl. You are going down. I have got you. There's no way you can get me tonight." Well, after getting crushed through double Jeopardy by her, and I don't know how, the final category was sports. The one category that I could beat her in. And she didn't have more than 50% or double my score. I had a chance to beat her, so I bet it all in Final Jeopardy. And what was the sports question? What sports film showed Woody Harrelson as a high school quarterback? What kind of a sports question is that? And of course, Lorraine knew, oh, Wildcats. I didn't even heard of Wildcats. So I badmouthed her with my ego and with my arrogance. And she just smiled with humility and beat me once again. And that takes us to our third and final lesson of perseverance and resolution. And those things are empty unless they are based on a foundation of love. It has to be a perseverance and resolution towards something you love. It was a Tuesday. She just finished her 32nd round of chemotherapy. 32nd for her leukemia, a cancer induced by the chemo she got adjuvantly for her breast cancer 2 years earlier. And the doctors came in, and as usual, it was bad news. We always got bad news. That's just the way it was. This time it showed that her bone marrow, her 6th bone marrow, showed worsening refractory cancer. In fact, the doctor never seen anything like it. Every other cell was out. Platelets, blood, all gone. The only thing there was cancer. And he gave her options. He said, one option is to go home and die. And I know you're having terrible pain, but we'll control your pain. And we won't tell your children, because we know in your house that word quit doesn't exist. We'll say we have no other options. And she said, what's the other option? He said, well, I can give you a 4th experimental, highly toxic dose of doublet chemotherapy. And she said, what's the chance that I can be cured of that? And he said, maybe 8 to 9%. And he was being generous. She said, doctor, I have 3 boys. I want to dance at their wedding. I want to see them graduate from high school and college. I want to see my husband give his presidential address in November. That was the last thing she really wanted to see. So what did she pick? She picked the 4th round chemo. It was a Friday afternoon I'll never forget. She finished her 38th round of chemotherapy. Her left arm was swollen with horrible, painful lymphedema that she couldn't bend. She had bacteremia and sepsis with lesions in her lung and her liver from Staph aureus. She had bled behind her eye, causing a partial blindness in her left eye that when she closed her eye was giving her horrible visions. And the doctors came in and gave her options. Go home and be at peace, or to try a high-risk bone marrow transplant. And she was incredibly blessed to have not one but 2 siblings who were a 10 out of 10 match. her sister Karen, who you heard read today, and her sister Michael, the giant guy had to put the microphone. And of course, because of their love of their sister, they came. What were her odds now? 5%. And he said he didn't recommend it. It was going to be too toxic and too difficult for her. She said, "Doctor, I have 3 sons. I want to dance at their wedding. I want to see them graduate college and graduate high school. I want to be at my husband's presidential address in November." She chose the bone marrow. Like a pitcher who's thrown 9 innings in a hot Alabama sunny day, she climbed out of the dugout, climbed the steps, walked up on the mound, and picked up the ball. She towed the rubber and started that inning throwing her 150th pitch. And that analogy isn't even short of what she did. She was exhausted. She fought a great fight. She never gave up. Perseverance. It was a Saturday, a glorious, sunny Alabama Saturday, April the 13th, 2013. I have an MBA class that I'm getting, and so I have to listen to an online course from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central Time. I always came up to her room and did that at her bedside. She was having more pain than ever the day before, and now was on a continuous Dilaudid drip. Her abdomen was distended, her arm was worse, but she had a good night, and she slept well. And we shared breakfast together, and she was in a great mood, doing well. And we walked the halls, and I said, "Honey, if you're going to get this bone marrow, we gotta walk the halls today, because yesterday we only got 1 lap in." And of course, me, the typical coach with the whistle, the pomposity, said, "Let's try 2 laps." And she made the first, and she made the second, probably more for me than for her. And we got back in bed, and I had to take her boots off. And for the first time, I saw anasarca, edema in her ankles. And I knew we were in trouble. And the MBA class ended, and I said, "Honey, Robbie, my oldest son, pitches at Yale, and he's pitching against Harvard. And when my sons are playing sports, that's my faithfulness. That's part of my religion, is production on the field and in the classroom. And we watched every pitch." And I said, "Honey, the game starts in an hour." She said, "I'm just so tired. I just got to get some sleep." I said, "Well, okay, I'll stay here." She said, "No, I want you to go home. I want you to go home because I've taken you away from Matthew and Alec. I've taken you away from your patients and your trips. I've taken you away from your MBA homework. And I want you to go home and be with the boys for a little bit. My parents are coming in later at 1, and I want you to go home." And I leaned over and said to her what I always said to her, and that is, "I love you so much, and I will always love you, and I will always be with you." I never thought it was going to be the last time that I would talk to her. And I abandoned her in that room, and for that I'm so sorry. I went home, and in the first inning, Robbie gave up a triple on the first batter of the game. And I picked up the phone and called her to say, maybe we need to work on his preparation, maybe his bullpen isn't right, maybe we got to study films more, what can we do? Because we can't put a 1 up at the first inning, we got to put a 0 up for his teammates. But Lorraine didn't answer. Mercifully, she bled into her brain, massively. I got the call on my beeper because I was cutting the grass, worrying about my own world and not my wife's bedside. I rushed in, and she had been intubated in the ICU. That turned out to be a blessing. It gave me time to fly in my son, who was in Boston with my family, and Alec, who was in Orlando, the captain of the baseball team, who decided that he wanted to compete nationally with this choir over playing his last baseball game. And if you heard them sing today, you know he made a great choice. Alec came in just in time at 8:30 a.m. It was a Sunday, April 14th. We held her hand, We played the theme from Lost called Life and Death. And she passed away at peace with help of her friends and family at her bedside. And although I focused a little bit on the end of her life, because so many people have asked me the details, the lessons she told us were early in her life: faithfulness, humility, and perseverance for a cause based on love. And so I hope you can apply those lessons to your life. And I will tell you this, that I was not worthy of her in this world, and I'm not asking for sympathy, I'm giving it to you straight. I was not. She was so much of a better person than me in so many ways. I whispered something in her ear right before she passed away, and she knows what it is. But I will promise you this, I will be a better person from this point on. I will do a better job with my children. I will do a better job focusing on the important things. And I will earn and deserve her in the next life in paradise.